Before we begin, this video is the third in a trilogy. Whilst this can work as a standalone video, it does follow on from some topics of the two that came before it, so you may wish to watch those videos first. Links for You Can't Play Everything and When You Want to Play Everything can be found in the description. Video games are amazing, aren't they? Somehow groups of people get together, talk a bunch, mess around on some computers, and then out pops a game. Not to oversimplify or anything. Now, not every game is a hit. Some are released to critical acclaim, whilst others are thrown out to the masses and fade into the realm of obscurity. Thousands of different games are released every year on a variety of platforms, and so the choice of what to play can admittedly be quite overwhelming. Having FOMO, the fear of missing out, can be one problem, but having too much choice can just be as detrimental. But then, that can also be a good problem to have. In the past, I myself have struggled with this, and whilst I won't say everybody is the same as me, I often found the best way to overcome that choice is to just start a game. It sounds so simple, I know, but sometimes you only take the leap once you've finally taken a step. Because of that, I've been able to experience so much talent that oozes out of these games. It does sometimes make getting to know me a little difficult when it comes to going on dates, making new friends, or idle chit-chat, as since I play so many different games of different genres, usually the conversation goes like,
"Yeah, I enjoy playing video games."
"What's some of your favourite games you've played?" "Alan Wake. No, Baldur's Gate 3. Bloodborne. Say Bloodborne. No, wait. Octopath Traveler. Oh god, you haven't said anything for more than 10 seconds. You know what? Just say anything. Absolutely anything. This is why I'm going to die alone. The first video was about how your past gaming experiences might affect the time you have left to enjoy the activity. The second was about how your present circumstances affect what you're able to do in gaming. So to cap off this trilogy of videos, I thought we might take a look at future scenarios this time. There is so much to experience in gaming, so let's dive into why you should go out of your way to perhaps try something you're not usually accustomed to. And since we are talking about the future, I need to bring back the death clock. One last time. Now, of course, it is impossible to play everything that has ever been made. Some games are simply no longer available to access, and there's just too much for any one person to experience. But with what's already out there waiting for you, there's no harm in trying. We live in a time where everybody fears losing everything. For no reason at all. Could PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam rescind digital copies of your games at any time? Sure. Are they going to? Well, only if you do something really bad to get permanently banned, so, don't do that. Of course, mistakes can and have been made. Phantom bannings do occur, but the percentage is so minute it's barely worth thinking about. Services do shut down, but unless something drastic truly happens to PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, and Nintendo, I think your digital games are fine. What you should be doing is just enjoying what is available regardless of how it is available. And this is coming from someone who also likes having physical copies of games. But even I know physical media will be dead in the next couple of decades, and I have no power to control it. But I don't let that stop me from playing just one of the hopefully thousands of other video games I'll get to try in my lifetime. Trying a new video game has never been easier these days. Cloud gaming has become more and more mainstream. RIP OnLive, you were clearly ahead of your time. Publishers are commonly dropping demos of the first few hours of their games. And after film and TV streaming services became the main way people consume content, it was only a matter of time before video games went the same way with the likes of Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. Let's begin with cloud gaming. Now, it might come as a shock to some of you, but I actually use cloud gaming quite often. Just maybe not in the way you expect. I'm not sponsored by Valve or anyone in fact, but I thoroughly love my Steam Deck purely because it lets me retry games I've maybe long forgotten about and can take them anywhere. So when I play on my PlayStation 5, I'm sitting in my desk chair hunched over in front of a TV, which isn't exactly comfortable for me. With my Steam Deck, however, I'm able to stream my PlayStation 5 using a third-party application to my Steam Deck, which means I can play it in bed. Don't get me wrong, if I can play a game natively for cheap on my Steam Deck, I will continue to do so, but just having the option has allowed me to knuckle down and enjoy my PlayStation games a lot more comfortably. Of course, playing through the cloud isn't for everyone. Connections can still be spotty, the stream resolution can randomly drop, and I'm sure a lot of people just don't have that great of a connection to even be able to try it. But it's just another way you could enjoy your games if you had that option. Then we have games which perhaps you'd like to try, but don't know if you want to invest the time and money into them. What I'm finding is that because developing games is becoming more and more of a risk, a lot of developers are releasing demos, or even free trials of their upcoming or newest game releases. These aren't just 10-minute demos like the ones we often had a decade or so ago, but instead give you a good few hours to get to know the world you could be spending your time in. RPGs especially do this, since what is giving a player the first 5 hours of a game to enjoy for free compared to the next 100 hours required to beat it? Finally, let's talk about game catalog services, and I kept this for last in this section of the video because I know it's a little bit more controversial. Personally, I think these subscription services are a fantastic way to get to play games from years gone by, to help give them a new lease on life. It's also a great way to help otherwise smaller titles that might get swallowed up in a sea of AAA games to get the recognition they may deserve. When full AAA games release through them on release day though, I become more skeptical because to me it shows a publisher has no faith in the game they helped fund. Anyway, the point I'm making is that if you are signed up to one of these services, you then have a variety of games you perhaps thought about trying once upon a time. But then, oh then, comes the main problem at hand, something which I think most of us have experienced at least once in our lives, especially on film and TV streaming services. Decision paralysis. How many times have you wanted to play that, or that, or that, and you simply cannot decide, and so in the end, you play nothing. But then, remember that trick I mentioned in the introduction? Just press play. I know, such a wild idea, but I'm being serious. As soon as you come across the first game that piques your interest on a gaming service, just download it and press play. It's like going bungee jumping. Instead of just taking the leap, your brain might suddenly overthink 1,000 different things that might happen, and so you never jump, even though you could be in for an exhilarating experience. If you play a game for a few hours and don't enjoy it, oh well. You gave it a go for very little money, and now you can try again with something else. We spend our time thinking more about what platform, what type of media, or what service we should be playing the games on instead of actually just playing them, and therefore potentially miss out on so many experiences. We can't help where the future is going, but we sure as hell can help what we enjoy in our present. Which brings me on to oh look, he's talking about the Souls franchise again. Yes, I am. It's basically tradition for these videos now, but I wanted to cap off this trilogy of talking about these games by saying, you can do it. There are people out there who do amazing things with these games. There are people who have no limbs and have to use weird controllers, and have done it. There are people who've used dance mats to do it. Heck, I even saw a few months ago a woman did it using her brainwaves, if that can be believed. I'm sure this is maybe making you, as someone who potentially can't beat them, feel some immense pressure. But you can do it. And if you still can't, how about this? If possible, One thing I genuinely think might help: play them with a friend. I have friends who I watch play video games. The PlayStation 5, for example, quite literally has a feature where I can just watch them one-on-one with no stream delay, where I'm perhaps giving them tips on what to do, being a second pair of eyes on things they've missed, or just being with them in the moment to motivate them. Supporting somebody who thinks they can't do something is one of the biggest motivators a person can have. Why else do we have audiences at sports games after all? If you can find a friend to watch and motivate you, it just might be the push you need. Okay, so you've tried, and you still can't. Time to give up? Well, maybe. You don't want to be wasting your time on games you're obviously not enjoying, but what needs to be understood is that not everyone will be good at something new on their first, or second, or even 10th try. Think about the very first game you can remember playing and then compare it to the games you play today. If you've only ever played one video game in your life, I don't know how you stumbled upon this video since it's about gaming in general, but special hello to you. Anyway, think about the gradual incline to what you first played to what you now play. You didn't get here because your brain suddenly shifted gears and became better at playing them. It was a very long process. You're not perfect and have bad days, but you found games which were your style, becoming generally good at them. And you found games that simply weren't worth your time. That's why we go to school. We start our life knowing so little on how to get through it and come out the other side both a little better and worse off than when we entered. That's what Souls games do to you. You go in knowing little of how to get through it, and then through trial, error, and successes, come out of it slightly changed in one way or another. Perhaps you learnt patience, your reflexes got better, or maybe you came to understand how unnecessarily angry you can get at things. You never know how something might affect you, good or bad. But a video game can change who you are as a person, either for the worse or the better. Let's discuss that a little more. A single video game has the capacity to shape a mind, whether it be based on a story it tells, or mechanics that can truly make you think differently. Minecraft started out as a simple building game, and over the years turned into something so huge that schools across the world began incorporating it into their classes, because it helped motivate children with their learning. Even for us adults, it's likely a good portion of us were inspired by it in some way. Maybe exploring a generated world made you want to explore the actual world to see what's out there. Or perhaps it helped unlock a creative side to you that you didn't realise was there. Sometimes it's not the gameplay, but the story instead. It's very rare that I can say that a video game has changed me for the better, but I can certainly say that some games have stuck with me, or even influenced me. I won't spoil the actual plots of them, but here's a few that come to mind. First, we have Soma. Just trying to wrap my mind around what actually occurs in it haunts me to this day. It's a simple game, but if you too want to have an existential crisis, I recommend it. Telltale's The Walking Dead, specifically the first season, somehow manages to make you invest in such simple characters and easily destroys you when bad things happen to them. And finally, well, how could I forget Alan Wake? It's a game I've played many times. It's a story with fun twists and turns that at this point has been seared into my brain and, despite being a psychological thriller, is a weird comfort for me. I don't know what that says about me, that every one of these games have some sort of horror vibe towards them. I swear I play happy and friendly games too. But then, that's a weird duality, isn't it? Here I am playing horror games with shocking gore and intense stories that will pull out your very soul for you to examine, and then the next moment you're enjoying a challenging speedrun in AstroBot. This is why, until the heat death of the universe, video games will never die, no matter how much someone might tell you on the internet that they are. Lately, I see a lot of people talking about how games are getting worse and worse purely because they include elements, specifically political ones, that they disagree with personally. Gaming is my distraction, so I shouldn't have to think about real-world problems. But that's precisely why those elements are prevalent. There will always be simple video games where you don't need to think, but mostly they exist to both be fun and make you think. They are meant to challenge who you are as a person, whether in a gameplay aspect or a story aspect. You don't have to agree with the elements in the game, you just have to respect that this is someone's world and story that they wanted to tell. They wanted their audience to see how they see the world. Video games are always evolving to tell these stories in new and different ways, and they evolve to try and widen the net for as many audiences as possible. What needs to be understood is that you, yes you, the person watching this video, aren't the only gamer in the world. By exploring different types of video games, you slowly but surely gain a wealth of knowledge and experience. In fact, and it may sound silly, some video games can even teach you things about the world. Assassin's Creed games have always been both a blend of fiction and real history, and even if sometimes they can get a little bit too far-fetched, especially in the earlier titles, it's amazing to stand in that world and just imagine what it must have been like during the depicted time periods, even if just for a moment. Or perhaps Cyberpunk 2077. Imagine if such a world of extreme cybernetics and political corruption ever came to pass. Maybe it could serve as a warning for us to not go down a path of such a dystopian future that, for some reason, we seem to be dangerously close to travelling down. Anyway, perhaps we should bring the mood back up a little bit. Oh god, and I was trying to make this a hopeful video. Hey you! Yes you, someone who only plays the big releases, get back here! I know you want to skip this part of the video, but what if I told you some of the best video games of all time came from studios made up of less than 30 people? Before I explain, I just want to go on the record to say that I play a lot of what are considered $70 AAA games. In fact, one of my favourite AAA games is where you're a god traversing a rich, excellently crafted world, going around beating the absolute crap out of everything whilst encountering other gods and learning who your character is as a person. Doesn't that sound pretty awesome? Well, I lied, because it isn't a AAA game and it's not God of War as the footage is showing, even if it is an excellent game. I was actually talking about an indie game named Hades. You might have heard of it. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Oh, you did? Oh. Okay. Well, I'll just carry on then. Hopefully some of you at least saw my point there. So many people choose not to play indies because they think they aren't worth the time compared to the big AAA games. Perhaps they think a smaller budget means for a lesser experience, but the thing about that is that it can actually make for a better experience because the development remains focused with no intervention from CEOs and shareholders whose only mindset is money. Of course, indie games want to make money too, but at least these developers can do what they want, how they want with their game. How many times have you played a AAA game and thought, this gameplay aspect feels very out of place, or I wish the game had this feature? Most indie games don't have you thinking about those things because it's usually a complete experience from the start, without the developer's vision being tampered with. Nobody told them to remove a whole chunk of the game you can just tell should be there, only for them to release it as paid downloadable content. Nobody forced them to release a game unfinished because they've got investors to please. These days, more and more AAA games are releasing expensively, feeling unfinished or over-bloated with content. Indie games, in my opinion, are often the happy medium. Sure, sometimes they can leave you feeling wanting more, but by the end of completing one, you will have had a cheap but excellent experience, perhaps at least just to tide you over until the next big release. And not to bring it up again, but the Steam Deck, or even the Switch, are the perfect machines for indie games. But the Steam Deck for me is also the perfect little device to try those games I didn't give much of a chance to impress me. Let's bring this set of videos full circle. With the amount of titles that are released every year, it's easy to forget about the games that you were originally going to try or even complete. Why bother playing a game from the 2000s, for example, when today there are games with better graphics, improved gameplay elements, and tightened controls? But the simplest answer I can give you is, why not? How often do you, as a person, watch or even rewatch movies or read books released decades ago? Why treat video games any differently? It's understandable when games aren't on the platform you currently own anymore, but remasters exist after all. What's stopping you there? Not to mention, almost every game from the PS4 or Xbox One era, spanning from 2013 to 2020, can be played on modern hardware. If there's one complaint I see from a lot of gamers, is that they wish developers went back to a time when video games were simple. Completely developed games with a simple premise, well-crafted gameplay, and no microtransactions. But then, what those same people fail to realise is that there are still games like that. They just weren't made today. Are you telling me you've played every game from 2010? 2005? What about before that? Whilst these days they might not be making the games like they used to for you, there are games you're talking about out there for you to find and try. You just have to set your mind to realise that the graphics will look slightly uglier and the controls won't be as tight. But if you can do that, you might find a whole era of games you almost missed out on before you die. Okay, but what if you have multiple games you want to play now? On my first video, I received a lot of comments from people who claim they can keep focused. They buy one game, complete it, and then move on to the next game. I envy those people. To live through life so plain and simply instead of myself, who sometimes has 3 games, if not more, on the go, where I may drop one halfway through completing it. The way a lot of us consume content has changed dramatically, especially during the time since I was a kid. As I said earlier, a lot of video games have become longer and more bloated, making it hard to stay focused. But they've also become more expensive, and so we're often left conflicted. We want our games to last us a while to make it worth our money, but not so long that we end up quitting halfway through, leaving the story unfinished. But maybe long, bloated games are your thing, because it allows you to remain absorbed in that world for longer. There has never been more choice than right now on what type of game to play. Shooters, RPGs, horror, fighters, platformers, MMOs, racers, sandbox, sports, real-time strategy, puzzler, simulation, action-adventure, the list truly goes on and on. However, so many people are stuck in their ways that they never choose to try something different. They don't want to play games long forgotten, just the newest releases because surely it's better than the old stuff. Sometimes, yes. But the older content is worth your time as well if you put your mind to it. And as we get older, our lives will change. People you meet online will log on for the last time. The games you used to be extremely good at now falter for you. Franchises you enjoyed for years suddenly feel exhausting to play. But here's the thing. Every second you spend doing something you enjoy, like gaming for example, is worth it. No matter what someone else tells you. What matters is how you go about enjoying that activity. If you want to spend it playing the same game over and over, or complaining online that a game didn't do what you demanded of it, that's on you. But from my personal experience, there is so much more to see, so much more to experience. Each one of us has a ticking clock. Whether we dare to think about it or not. What matters is what you do with the time remaining. As the title says, try to play everything. Because for all we know, we truly do only get one life. And this is your last chance to do so. Hey, you've got this.